We really need energy and raw materials. But no one is interested in Africa developing too much. Because if it develops tomorrow, let's imagine Africa develops its industry like South Korea did, a country that was as poor as Mozambique 6 years ago. If tomorrow it starts making cars, if tomorrow it starts refining its oil, if tomorrow it starts doing agriculture and transforming its agricultural products, it will no longer buy our imports. And so we are not interested in that situation. We are not interested. So we have to maintain Africa in an intermediate situation, so that it is rich enough to buy our goods and stable enough for us to buy the goods we need.
Hello everyone, I hope you're doing great wherever you are. Welcome to the channel once again, and in case you're coming across this channel for the first time, you're also highly welcome. Now in today's video, I want us to answer a few questions here, and questions that really matter for us as Black people, as Africans, and people of African descent, wherever we are across the globe. So have you ever imagined what would be of the world, what would be of Africa itself, if Africa started to mine its minerals and process its minerals before selling or exporting to the entire world? Have you ever thought what would the world look like if Africa tapped into its agricultural potential, fully 100%, and produced enough food capacity for itself and for the rest of the world? Because of course we know that Africa is very capable. Have you ever asked yourself this question? What would be the scenario looking like if Africa drilled its oil, processed its oil, used its oil, and the surplus sold to the rest of the world? Because Africa is very rich in all the natural resources. Africa strategically supports agriculture throughout the year, but we have never tapped into our potential. In fact, Africa's resources are being exploited by someone else and at the benefit of someone else. Here is a video that I'm going to share with you by this French professor. Let's watch this video, and at the end of the video, we add our voice, our opinions, and our thoughts to it. So let's go right into this video.
We really need energy and raw materials. But no one is interested in Africa developing too much. Because if it develops tomorrow, let's imagine Africa develops its industry like South Korea did, a country that was as poor as Mozambique 6 years ago. If tomorrow it starts making cars, if tomorrow it starts refining its oil, if tomorrow it starts doing agriculture and transforming its agricultural products, it will no longer buy our imports. And so we are not interested in that situation. We are not interested. So we have to maintain Africa in an intermediate situation, so that it is rich enough to buy our goods and stable enough for us to buy the goods we need.
Please watch this video carefully. You will understand the main reasons why Western powers prevent African countries from developing properly.
There was this idea, actually in people's minds, that you develop a country with entrepreneurs. It's an important part, but it's not the main part. An industry is needed, a heavy industry. These countries export oil, export cocoa, export raw materials, but these raw materials they export are often processed in other countries. And processing is what creates jobs.
Quand vous avez une compagnie étrangère qui s'installe, je prends toujours l'exemple moi, du Congo, Brazzaville, que je connais bien.
When you have a foreign company setting up, I always take the example of Congo-Brazzaville, which I know well. Congo-Brazzaville, over 90%, only exports oil. This oil is produced by whom? Exploited by whom? By mostly private companies. 60% total, 30% ENI. The Italian, 90% of the company. Then you have a few companies here and there, private ones. The public Congolese oil company is unable to do drilling. It is unable to exploit all of its oil. It collects part of the money, but it is unable to exploit it. So all the knowledge on production, on reserves, all the quantities, production volumes are decided by the private company, which does not depend on the country. So that's the first thing. There is a real asymmetry of information between the state and the company. The prices of their goods, 90% of exports, therefore oil, the price is not determined by Congo. It is determined by the financial markets. So, when there are tense geopolitical situations like now, prices go up, it benefits them.
Et l'État congolais rachète de l'essence à ces pays-là. Donc la réalité, c'est qu'il faudrait qu'il y ait une industrie qui puisse transformer.
When the price is zero, as in the COVID period, nothing comes in. Nothing comes in. So we can see that there is a very strong dependence. And then this product is exported, processed in France or elsewhere. And the Congolese state buys gasoline back from these countries. So the reality is that there should be an industry that could transform this production on the spot. And it is this one that would create jobs, refineries, distribution, etc. But to have that, what is needed? Funding is needed to finance heavy industry. It's not with €1 of microcredit that you're going to finance heavy industry. And this funding, if the banks don't want to lend it, who will lend it? It's China, but China is a country. It will lend it under certain conditions. Conditions sometimes on access to raw materials or more advantageous sharing of production for them, and so it does not allow them to be completely independent. And it must be kept in mind that rich countries have developed in a world where they created conditions that were favorable to them. The WTO, the World Trade Organization, is an organization that has favored rich countries much more than poor countries.
On n'arrive pas à lever de l'argent.
Quels seraient les...
Ce que je veux ajouter, excuse-moi, je te coupe.
The financial system, with mostly European and American banks, the rich countries. And so rich countries raise huge funds to carry out their projects, while poor countries to carry out projects we know. That is to say, to do things we know, refineries, food, agricultural industries. We know how to do that. Well, they can't raise money. What I want to add, excuse me, I interrupt you. What I want to add is that we have often said in recent years that poor countries were not developing because of corruption. We had to find a reason. There is an informal economy. They do not respect the rules. They are corrupt. Some even went further by saying that they are a bit lazy. It has always been a bit like that. And we found the same kind of debate when there was the sovereign debt crisis in Europe, where we called the southern countries pig. They were called Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. They were called the pig. They were said to be lazy, that they were in the informal, that they were not like the Germans and the French. This debate already existed with African countries. They don't work, they are lazy. They don't have good training, they are corrupt. Very well, that's what we said. If tomorrow I were given the reins of Congo, Brazzaville, and I was told what the formula is in the current conditions to get it out of underdevelopment and make the economy take off, it would be extremely complicated, and I would tell you that I don't have the solution. Because it's a country, in fact, that does not have control over development at all. Because it does not have access to financing, as I said. Because it does not control the main good it produces. Because it does not control the volume and the price. And so developing a country under these conditions is extremely difficult. So corruption is actually a collateral effect. The real problem is the World Trade Organization and the financial system as it was created.
Okay, so from this video, something that we realize and that is clear is that nobody is interested in a developed Africa, and especially the so-called the developed world, or let's call them the Western world, because a failed African continent means a prosperous West. What I'm trying to say simply is their sheer success is dependent on our failure as Africa. And they do this by so many means. They have to make sure that Africa remains in a position of subjugation, because by doing so, then they get the market for their finished product. By doing so, they get a cheap place to exploit, to acquire natural resources. And by doing so, they are able to acquire cheap African labor. But if then Africa is developed, stands up for itself, produces and consumes for itself, then it's going to be a big problem for them because they run out of resources, they run out of market, they run out of manpower, and they're not going to take that lying down. They're not going to just easily accept that defeat. So they apply all means to make sure that Africa remains in that intermediate position where they can only consume, produce just as little as enough for them to export to them in form of uh, um, raw materials and finished products, and so then Africa can uh, exorbitantly import the products they just exported. Isn't it so funny that Africa produces so much oil, but even those huge producers of oil in Africa, a country like Nigeria and Angola, for years have been drilling oil, crude oil, only to export it to the West, countries in Europe and America, and at, of course, cheap prices because it is crude oil, and then import it back, import all finished petrochemicals at very high prices. So you see, this is how they go about this business. First of all, they make sure that they manipulate and they compromise the leadership of Africa so that whoever that is in power in Africa is dancing to their tunes, is playing by their rules, is playing by their script, and this is something that is so dear to them, so dear that you see when we go across the continent of Africa, we realize that all the puppet leaders are puppets of the West, are enemies. If you come to the ground, you realize, and when I'm talking about Africa, this actually goes beyond the continent of Africa to the Caribbeans, to the black people in Europe, the black people in North America, the black people in South America, and wherever else that is occupied by black people. See that those that are puppets of the West are actually enemies of their people. Because why is this the case? Because whenever you become endeared by the West, is because they are able to get what they want from you at a compromised status. And this is often always hurting the people on the ground, the people that sent you to power, the people that elected you to lead them. And on the contrary, those people, those African and black leaders that speak for the black majority, speak for the black people, are actually enemies of the West. And propaganda and lies are going to be shunned out to everybody, to everyone, and they are going to be painted in the wrong light. And it goes as bad as to their elimination. And we can count African leaders that stood for the truth, spoke truth to power, called out the West for exploitation of Africa, and they, because of that, or even try to unite Africa to become one mass block of power, they were eliminated by the West under very unclear circumstances, So the truth here is that the West is going to use any means within their reach and within their power to keep Africa where it is, because that means success for them. Africa is not actually underdeveloped, it is overexploited. and anyone that is trying to uh, you know, as a leader, if you come out and try to challenge this narrative, then you're not going to be loved by the West. And if anything, they might want to actually eliminate you and your story. Now, because there is a wave of an awakening Africa, I personally believe it is time to push this gospel of truth to every corner that the black person occupies, call the black people to unity, to stand for ourselves and to stand for one another, unite Africa, unite black people within the continent, outside of the continent, and become one powerful, black community. Because by doing so, then we can liberate. And for as long as we don't do that, as long as we are not interested in the narrative of coming together as black people, coming together as African states, coming together with the Caribbeans, with the black community in America, in South America, in Europe, then the imperialist, the enemy, is always going to be in our midst, compromise us, compromise our leadership, and we are going to remain at this position forever. So wake up, black people, stand for yourself, call out the West for this, spread the gospel of truth, and most importantly, let's hold leadership of black people to account. And those that are compromised, those that are manipulated, we should, without a second thought, send them home and clean our political systems, clean our leadership systems. Yeah, so that is this for this video. I hope you will be able to share your thoughts, your opinions, and comments in the comments. Like, share this video, and support this channel by subscribing to it if you haven't yet done so. Until next time, see you in the next video. Peace.